Check. Check one. Can you hear me? Welcome to The Truth is Loud. Thank you, Lady A, for putting this together and for continuing these discussions. We understand how important they are and the need right now to talk about white supremacy, white normativity, and how that functions in our lived experiences today. Racism is something that disconnects us from our humanity. It has exploited every single one of us, just differently. And we want to begin just by naming our that we are on Indigenous land. And it's important to understand that that is not something that is past, that is something that is current. We live and work among Indigenous folks whose history is full of genocide and murder, and that we right here, all of us on this screen, we are the outcome of colonization. We have benefited from the genocide and harm to Indigenous people, and we have to note that that is part of our lived experience as we talk about racism and white supremacy exploits us all just differently. While it has sought to erase the lived experience of Indigenous folks, it has also exploited Black and brown bodies' death, Black bodies' death in our streets today. They are one and the same. They are tied together. They happen because it is possible to exploit Indigenous folks. And so just wanting to begin with the fact that we are the outcome of colonization, the outcome of genocide of Indigenous folks. My name's Kiana Wheeler, and I identify as Black. I use she, her pronouns, and I've been an anti-racist educator for about 20 years now. I'm gonna pass it over to our additional facilitator. We're co-facilitating today, Darlene Flynn.
Let me unmute. Good morning, everyone, and thank you so much for being here. And I'm really looking forward to our time together. So I don't have too much to add. I was reflecting this morning on the homework assignment, which I hope everyone had a chance to complete. It wasn't too bad. I'm hearing positive feedback from having the opportunity to spend 13, 14 minutes with the amazing Brian Stevenson. And I was reflecting myself on it. I went back and rewatched it. I use that video a lot in training and in framing up facilitated conversations. And I wanted to see it again so that I was completely refreshed, and things really stood out for me this time. The idea of getting proximate and how the tragic and prolonged death and murder of George Floyd brought the entire country proximate to a phenomenon that many of us have lived in fear of for our entire lives, and how that proximity, that video that the brave young woman captured, that video brought the entire country closer to something that we needed to see, and a tragic outcome for the individual that was subjected to it. Then I thought about the part about changing the narrative and how right now there's an attempt nationally to put the racialized narrative back about people who protest, and Black people and brown people and people who go out in the streets for their rights are being criminalized again and are being brutalized by the police in an effort to free ourselves from that brutality. And how that attempt is so blatant and so clear that we want to make sure that the country sees those of us that are fighting for what is right as being the ones who are wrong. And so we've got to fight that narrative. That narrative is really trying to roar back. And then the struggle with staying hopeful in such hard times when things are going wrong in so many ways, and how it's become an everyday ritual for me to remind myself how important hope is, and that hope is my superpower. And boy, if we ever needed superpower, it's now. So this is the moment where we have to stay hopeful. And then finally getting uncomfortable, and where I get to challenge myself. I'm very privileged to have the opportunity to work on race and racism every day, and to make sure that I'm keeping myself uncomfortable, because I've been doing it like Kiana for 20 years. And it becomes almost, it's your daily grind, and you can forget that we too need to keep pushing that edge and making sure that we're not becoming complacent in our work. Those of us who've been leading this can feel disappointed in ourselves, but it's important that we fight that by staying uncomfortable ourselves in our work. So these concepts are so important to changing the world. And that's what we're here for today. That's the purpose of this conversation, to further our ability to change the world. So thank you for being here.
And I can hear the sirens. I live in a community that is over-policed. Darlene, can I pass it to you before these sirens get loud?
Sure. That happens moment to moment. And I know I've been doing so many Zoom meetings, Kiana, I wouldn't worry too much about it. We have children, we have pets, we have, we're living in this Zoom world. So, where we are is where we are, and we understand. But I know that what we're going to do today is focus on just a couple of questions. We're going to open it up with questions, right? Are we ready to do that now? Am I in the right place on the script? Good. It's early for me on a Saturday morning, but we're going to just look at a couple of things today. Last time we tried to do a lot of questions. This time we're going to keep it simple for you so that a lot of people have a chance to respond to the questions. And I think that it's a two-sided question for me. One side of the question is, what are the white people on this panel thinking about and doing about cultivating your own ability to be a change agent in this world that we're living in now, and to do that in an anti-racist way. And when we talk about how we manifest this in our lives, we often talk about allyship. We also talk about solidarity and accomplices. How do we manifest that in our lives? What are the struggles around that, and how are we overcoming them? And then for people of color that are here to share your stories on the panel today, how do you see yourself fitting into that picture of cultivating white allies in your world? A long time ago, I read an article about allyship that was written for people of color, and it reminds us that we deserve accomplices in this work. We deserve co-conspirators. We deserve allies because we have experienced oppression, and we have not had a fair treatment in this country. So if we're going to move through that, it will be a multicultural movement. It will be a multiracial movement, and we deserve to have strong, prepared, skilled co-conspirators to help us dismantle racism. So that's it, right? Did I get the questions right, Kiana? Okay, good. That's what we're going to be talking about. And I think what we can do is just open up the floor, unless Kiana wanted to say a little bit more now that the sirens have subsided.
Just a reminder to name, and you can use first name, your gender pronouns, your race.
And I do prefer the pronouns she, her, hers, and identify as African American or Black. I also identify as multiracial, mixed race. Just to model that. So who's up now?
Are we going to answer, are you asking the question and we're putting that to everyone? If you could repeat the question.
So the question is slightly different depending on how you identify racially. But the question is about allyship, about how we create a movement of allies and liberation workers like ourselves, of the people of color that are on the panel. We're doing liberation work. The white people on the panel are doing allyship and co-conspirator work. And we want to explore the two sides of that. White folks, talk about your experience with that and how you manifest that daily. Or the other thing you could talk about is what the video brought up for you, because it's a very powerful video. It always does move people to think about themselves and where they are positioned in this work. People of color, we're going to be thinking about what we expect from white people, what we want from white people, and also share strategies with other people of color about how you cultivate that in your life without exhausting yourself, because we know it can be exhausting. So we're going to be sharing from the two sides of the dynamic. I call it the dance. The dance of racism has given us different assignments. I do like to social dance, and closed position partner dancing. And we know in dancing, we're assigned different roles. They're social roles. They're very gendered, as a matter of fact, for all intents and purposes. And so we're dancing this dance together, and we have different jobs. We've been shaped by racism differently because of the way we're socialized into racism, and we do a different dance. But we want to create a dance that ends racism. We want to change the dance. So that means we all have to start doing our parts differently. How's that going? What are you doing? What are your challenges? How are you problem solving? I think so. It's not a succinct question, but it's a reflective question.
I'm happy to start, I guess. Hate to be the first one to talk. So I'm Alex. I use she, her, or they, them pronouns. I'm Black, Alaskan Native, and Portuguese mostly. And I think the biggest thing for me is understanding how to work within Native spaces versus Black spaces, and that white allyship looks different in those spaces because different groups will want different things, and there's even like subgroups within groups. And so I've learned to navigate that, and then being half white as well, using that leverage and the relative privilege to have conversations with white folks who may be more comfortable with me or may know me. We might be more in each other's circles than other folks, and so just using that relative privilege to have those conversations, I think.
Thank you so much, and thank you for breaking the ice.
I think I'll jump in. My name is James Hargens. I'm Mexican-American Latino. I've identified as white half my life. My father's Italian, but I identify as Mexican-American for as long as I can remember. I've always kind of struggled with that a little bit. I'm a product of the system. I came up in a gladiator camp and prisons and all that. And, it makes it really hard to identify who you are. In a spiritual, healthy way. In a group setting, it's really easy. You just go, I could either go with the Mexicans or the whites. That was it. I didn't have another option. So I only saw I only had bad negative interactions with Latinos and with African Americans. And as you can see, my role models were like prisoners and the worst of the worst. That's why we were there. So I, until I got a little bit older, and I might rant a little bit here, but there's a point, and became able to make my own decisions about who people were, queer folks, Mexican, Black, whatever. I had negative reactions when I was around certain people and races and so forth, sexual genders, you name it. But then I grew up. I came to Seattle. I got involved in theater. I got involved in creativity, and I just went, wow, what the hell is wrong with me? And kind of found my way through it. What I'm doing now to answer your question is I take this very personally because it's affected my family. It's affected my mother. Sorry, this is emotional. My mother's very brown, very obviously Mexican, and it, I struggle between being this warrior and this warrior. So what I do now is, I don't know how long it's taken me to notice this. I think I was rather obtuse the first part of my life about racism. But if I do see it, and I have seen it, and it's come up recently in the last couple of years, I confront it very vigorously. I had a situation in an industry that I work in where it's a little bit rampant, and it's rampant. And I was like, I told the guy, look, I'm not the one, dude. I don't know who you think I am or how you think you could speak like that around me, but I'm just not the one, bro. And it continued, and I went through the proper channels, and he got suspended. And so what that taught me was when I came into a room, when he was talking to other people, there was silence, and he would stop speaking. And I went, that tells me that this mofo knows now to choose his audience. And I know that what I did was make him look around a little bit before he drops an N-bomb, or before he says something derogatory, or before he just bees himself. Like, look around and see who the hell's in the room. And I want him to think of me. I want him to think of this face every time he goes and says some derogatory race, person, or thing. So I feel like I succeeded a little bit, and I'll do that. I do that daily. Definitely, you know, it's a learned behavior. It's a learned behavior to be racist. It's a learned behavior to be unracist. And if we walk, you know, 10 miles into the forest, we have to walk 10 miles out. And that's what I'm doing. I'm learning to walk 10 miles out. I won't be silenced. I will not be silenced. My mother's a passive warrior, and sometimes I'm just like, no, I'm not the one. You know, let's go get maced or do whatever the hell we need to do. But you know, I want to get it on, and but I'm peaceful in the same way. You know, so I'll stop talking now. But thank you for listening.
Thank you for sharing your rage. I think it's important for us to acknowledge that trauma has been done, and rage follows trauma. So it's understandable, and also how you're working with it, how you're using it to motivate and to take action. Thanks, James.
Can I also just provide a little bit of framing around that? Your early experiences are some of many folks' early experiences. What we're socialized to do is understand our roles in the society to uphold white dominant culture. And our roles are around anti-Black racism. Our roles are around proximity to whiteness, and our roles are really to hold that hierarchy together. And then as you became an adult, you understood the need to knock that down. And that's a lot of our experiences, while very different experiences, very similarly structured. Thank you.
Can I add real quick? So I go into the juvenile halls, or I was before COVID, and it was very emotional, as you can imagine. The first time I'd been back in an institution, but I went there as a man trying to help, and with hope, strength, and experience. And this might give you a little bit of hope. It's changed a little bit. You know, you see Mexicans and Blacks and white kids hanging out. And I think the narrative now for younger kids now, it's different. There was no option when I was in Preston and CYA and all the gladiator camps I went to and stuff. You hung out with the whites, Blacks, or Mexicans. That was it. And if you did not, there was violent consequences. So I see that now. I see there is change happening. And I think the younger generation is kind of looking at us and just going, oh, a bunch of fools, you know? And that narrative comes together with music, which I've got a project going that maybe I could talk to Lady A after the meeting about this, but I'm putting together a recording studio inside the facility to help kids express themselves and so forth. So thank you.
Thank you, James.
And it looks like we had some hands raised. We're going to go in that order. The first one that we were informed of, help me out, Lady A. Where are they at?
Dr. Tanya English, Diana Brown, and Zan, I'm sorry, I don't have the last name, and Zan Ross.
Zan Ross.
Yes. So we'll have Dr. English go first, then Diana Brown, then Zan. And if you, once you've talked, if you can take your hand down.
Then Melanie Owen.
Oh, then Melanie Owen, got it.
Thank you.
Dr. Tanya English, here I'm white, she and her, and hers is my pronouns. And the question about how is this happening right now? Well, I'm a blues singer and I do healing. And so what I'm trying to help people understand is blues is a great way to do healing, because blues is a healer, because we're naming our emotions, we're identifying our emotions, and people need to know where that came from, because it didn't come from wonderful times. And so I'm trying to make sure that people are connecting the history of blues and why that is important, along with the emotion that we have, and to deal with emotions. Like you just heard James apologize for getting emotional. Nobody should ever apologize for being emotional. We're human beings. But to learn how to deal with our emotions, I mean, it's the thing that separates us from other beings on the earth, other living things, is our emotions. It's how we interact, and it's actually how our physiology is created in our bodies. So what I'm doing every day is helping people do self-care that brings them into love energy as opposed to fear energy. Because when you're in love energy, you can get a lot of stuff done, and you can actually send that as a ripple effect out to everyone around you. I'm not perfect at it. I've been doing it for a long time, but it's a challenge because we all have to do the self-care. It's not just the people who are fighting on the front lines, it's everybody. And when we take care of our own energy, when we do the things that we know that help us to feel grounded and in connection with source energy, then we can do anything. And the fact is that the more people we have coming out of fear and going into love, the better, because they can't abide. Fear and love cannot abide. So if we're doing things out of fear, it's important for us to remember that that's not helping us physically. And if it's not helping us physically, it's not helping us in other ways too, because that's all rippling outward. So trying to release the baggage of hundreds of years of oppression, it's a big job, but it's absolutely doable. It's absolutely able to be done. And so what I want to see is more people, I don't want to say fighting for love, because we just want to love for love. We want to be connected to each other through that, instead of, trying to make someone feel differently, because we're all souls. We don't have a soul. We are a soul. We have bodies. So if we're all souls and we all have that common experience, everyone can have the blues. There's no denying that. We can all do that. But how do we get out of that? How do we allow ourselves to feel good, even though we've had traumatic experiences? One of the things that we do is we unattach our emotional experience to that, so that it's not continuously happening. So the things that I'm using James as an example, because he gave us wonderful examples, as having that thing happen over and over and over again in the subconscious, and being triggered by something that energy from what's happening present time, because present time is good. Present time is fine. Present time is where healing happens. Present time is where it's all okay. But what we have is all of this past that we are dragging forward. I'm not saying that we shouldn't know about it. I'm just saying we shouldn't be attached to it, so it's not working on us all the time. And that's where people can get completely exhausted. And so putting that to what you're doing daily and doing that self-care, simple thing to do, 4-count breathing. Breathing in for 4 counts, holding it for 4 counts, exhaling through your nose for 4 counts, and holding it out for 4 counts is going to take you from fight or flight into rest, digest, and heal. And it's so important to be in that grounded rest, digest, and heal, so that you can do the work that you need to do. So I'm just putting in my own personal experience is that I've been around all different people all of my life. I don't say that I don't see color, because I do. Everybody has their own culture, and everybody's culture is rich. And I feel like the most depleted culturally because I'm white, and because I'm, half Jewish and half WASP, and the culture for me isn't really there. But other cultures have that, and thousands of years of that. So for me, I'm a little bit jealous about that, I guess, because we kind of have to make our own culture in that way.
So let me step in there a little bit, because this is a fairly common theme. And I just want to just encourage you to reflect on the fact that your culture, i.e. white culture, is the dominant theme in this country. And it's always been a very interesting thing to me that white people, part of the socialization and the racial confusion is that white people don't have a culture. When it's white people culture that we call white supremacy that is running the world. So I think it's a tough thing to grapple with, how people have been socialized into not seeing their whiteness and not seeing the white culture that they didn't necessarily choose. I mean, I go with you there. You didn't choose to have white culture,
Right.
but white culture is what you got. And it's actually very, very loud. It's very big, but there's this place in which racial confusion often leads people to think that they don't have a culture when in fact they have the culture. And I think that's a function of the culture being the water that we're swimming in. It's the water we're all swimming in.
Exactly.
The culture we all navigate.
How does it? Yeah.
The other thing I noticed was you as you were talking about the
How does a fish know it's in water?
How does a fish know it's in water? That's exactly your dilemma.
Yeah.
I mean,
exactly.
people of color tend to be very knowledgeable about the water. We can tell you all about it and we can describe it to you in great detail. But I think part of the work of a co-conspirator is to learn to understand that that the water that they're in is their water, and that in fact the reason they don't notice it is because it is so pervasive. So I'll just leave it at that, Kiana.
And
yeah, I wanted to add and apologize, Dr. Tanya, for simply the fact that we don't have time
sure.
to do multiple back and forths.
Yeah.
I apologize. I'm going to go definitely to the next person, but I do want to also just name that there is a clear. If any of us wanted to, let me start this way. We believe in this society that race enters the room when people of color enter the room. And in reality, whiteness is a race. It has a lot of currency. It is the dominant culture in which all of us live. And one of the things that's very clear for Black and brown folks and for folks who assimilated into whiteness is that they had to give up certain things in order to do so. And part of that assimilation is the desire to have a homogenous, same all around language, view, picture of what people are. When people all around the world think of American culture, they don't think of Black and brown folks. And so just a reality of there is a white culture, and it is, like Darlene said, so loud to the rest of us. And part of what white folks' work is in understanding how to be an accomplice is understanding what that ladder looks like to climb it, what that assimilation ladder looks like. And that's through even, I'm going to use my own elitism that I've been working through, that's even around education, right? The fact that I no longer say I have all of these degrees. I no longer use the letters around my name, because really that's trying to say that the only people that are capable of having this conversation are people with degrees. And actually it's a lived experience that makes us capable of having these conversations. And so just noting that there's lots of ways in which we climb that ladder. There's lots of ways in which we try to assimilate into whiteness that has a lot to do with just the systems in our society, not simply our skin color. But whiteness, please do, as an accomplice, everybody, think about the ways in which you have let go of things that build a outside of whiteness culture. You had to let those go in order to get into this water and be one of those fish, right? The rest of us are gulping water that is toxic to us. Right. And so just recognizing that it is, white culture is very, very clear to many of us. And I'm going to go to the next person who I believe we have a lot of hands raised. A couple of things, we're going to keep it really tight in time because of that. And there's some questions in the chat about how to find the hand raise. Please do look those through, but I am going to go back to our list, which I can never seem to find after I write it. Who was next?
Diana, and
Thank
then
you.
Sam. Mm-hmm.
Thank you for keeping track of that.
Thanks, Darlene. Thanks, Kiana. I'm Diana, she, her, and I'm white. Both the homework question and the video really brought something into focus for me. I was trying to think about not what I believe, but what I do in allyship. And listening to the video really brought me to this place of realizing that the challenges of allyship are mostly self-imposed. I had a conversation for a white person. I had a conversation with somebody in a Facebook group recently, and she was representing her opinion as American. And, you know, your opinion doesn't even represent all of the US, much less the 40 odd countries on the continents. And I got this very kind of white lady response back from her that ended with, we're clearly not communicating very well today. I'm sure we'll have a better conversation another day. And I answered back, I said, you know, I don't see that happening because I'm going to continue to call out white Americans who center themselves in ways that erase the existence of people that aren't like them. And then I walked away. And then I fretted. Oh my gosh, was I too harsh? Am I starting stuff because I'm a white woman and my culture punishes me for being disruptive or for taking up too much space? And then another member of the group messaged me and he said, you know, my dad was from Mexico and he always insisted that he was an American long before he became a US citizen. And I remembered that sometimes you talk not because you're going to convince the racist, but because other people in the room need to hear that you don't agree with them. And then the nice white lady brigade came for me because Karen reported me to my manager. The moderator of the group came and said, hey, I haven't actually read all of it, but I hear there was this conversation where someone felt like you might be implying they were a racist. And I said, nope, I didn't imply anything. Here's exactly what happened. And the moderator is a teacher. And she said, okay, you know, I can see that. And in future, if something like that happens, can you bring it to me instead? And I said, no. And we went back and forth a couple of times and she did the teacher thing where she heard me out and then said, but I need you to do this instead. And finally I said to her, you know, I get that you don't want to embarrass this person, that you don't want to make them uncomfortable, but why are their feelings more important than the feelings of the people that they are harming with their words? And then I went back to the person who messaged me and said, I'm not going to name you, but can I tell this person that this conversation happened so they get it? And he gave me permission to do that. So I told her that. And I can still hear the wheels in her head turning several days later, but she did finally back off and say, great, if you need to do that, let me know so I can come in and do the moderator thing afterwards. I get that, okay. And then I watched this video and I was listening to the conversation, and there is this man in a wheelchair who has taken physical scars, and I was kind of comparing myself like, oh, the horror of being socially isolated and rejected when this man has suffered so much more. And had to remind myself that wounds to your soul are wounds too, and they still count. That being isolated when you're a social creature counts. And most importantly, that this is not the oppression Olympics and I am not competing with that man to see who has suffered more. Allies, pro tip, it's almost never going to be you. That the measure here isn't how well I did compared to him, but how far we together have moved that bar and which direction I was pushing.
Yeah.
And that was kind of my huge ally reflection lesson from realizing that I was comparing myself and doing that American individualism, exceptionalism thing, like somehow my allyship wasn't good enough, and then realized what's not good enough is not doing it. And yes, it's going to be uncomfortable. And yes, I'm going to get myself in trouble. But obviously, I've got a big mouth and I'm a girl and I'm white. I get myself in trouble anyway. So since he's no longer here to tell me to do it, I'm going to rely on the words of a man who told me that I should be willing to get into good trouble.
Necessary trouble. Yes.
Thank you for the opportunity to speak.
Yes, yes. Sorry.
Thank you, Diana. Thank you for sharing that. I think Zan Ross is up next.
Hi. Yeah, I'm Zan Ross. I'm white, go by she, her. I am glad to follow up Diana because I've been listening to what other people are talking about what they're doing and thinking, you know, I'm not doing nearly as much, but what I'm doing is what I need to be doing right now. So I have spent most of my life in very white communities and was raised with this idea that, you know, racism was handled in the 60s. We're not racist. You don't pay attention to the color of people's skin, all of that. And so I'm in the position where all the things that have come up in the last few months have been new to me, and I've been angry, I guess, that I feel like it was all hidden from me when I was growing up. So I've spent a couple months diving into Black history. I am part of a Facebook group led by a Black woman who is teaching everybody in the group how to discuss things without harming people of color. And I, engage there. I post the things I learn on my social media, which is very small, but I feel like being able to take the things I'm learning and the position that I'm in of this all being new and putting it out there for other people who grew up in the same town as I did, for maybe it's new to them too. So I'm just spreading the information as I find it. In really at this point with the pandemic, I feel like that's all I can do. We don't go out much. We stay home for health reasons. So everything I'm doing is online, and I'm just in a position of learning and sharing what I learn and speaking to people when the opportunity comes up. There's just not really much else to do right now that I know of.
Thank you. Yeah, thank you so much. And I just want to say that one of the things that's really clear is that our society historically has centered white folks as the knowers of everything in society. And so it's really challenging for white folks to sit as learners in this moment. And just a reminder that we can use different isms as a reminder of how this is done. I like to remind when I'm talking to white women that if this was about feminism, it would be weird for men to be the owners and knowers and doers. It would be weird. But they're practiced in feeling those ways. And so white folks are practiced in feeling that they should know. And so I thank you, Zan, for just naming how you're sitting in learning, right? And what that means to always, Diana said, it will never be about white folks, right? But it is white folks' problem as well. Right. And so just knowing what it means to be not the center in this moment is also a practice that folks will have to take on.
Thank you. Michelle, I see you. You're next on the list. I'm just going to go straight down because I don't know what order people's hands went up. Michelle Bergy.
It's Melanie. Melanie, go.
Melanie's next? All right. Thank you for passing the ball. Melanie.
Hi, I'm Melanie. I'm white. I use she and they pronouns. I am in a remote part of northern Colorado right now that I looked up. I am on Arapaho, Cheyenne, and Ute Nations land. At the moment, I'm traveling. Yeah, it's good. Looking that up is part of my practice now, which is very important. So cultivating allyship, my allyship, standing in solidarity and becoming an accomplice. I had not heard about abolitionism, so reading and listening to talks online about abolitionism and understanding what that means and having my view really expanded to is part of my work. My work outside myself has been mainly online and kind of amplifying voices when people, because I do live in Seattle, I just happen to be on the road right now. So when I have friends or relatives that are questioning what's going on in Seattle in the protests, just disseminating correct information, things that come from King County Equity Now, from Defund SPD, from Resign Durkin, so just disseminating information and then sharing streams and whatever of people who are down on the ground doing the protests. So it's been online and then So I've also joined a group that my friend in Denver started about interrupting racist talk. And it's a group of artists. I'm a musician. So, but I come from theater background. And so this group is talking about, here's something that happened. I didn't know how to speak up or speak out. So then we kind of like, we use improv to run the scenario so that we can program neuronal pathways to speaking in a certain way when instead of freezing or running away or, you know, I can just get really angry. So finding ways of effective ways of interrupting racist talk. So that has been really good. Practicing that, and the group is a group of white people, and we're figuring it out. You know, what does it look like? Is it a brave space? Is it a, you know? So that's been really good. So then, outside of me and outside of online, I have I've been traveling. I've been on the road. And I've been seeing old friends, and I have come up against that discomfort because I've been kind of bathing in this study and bathing in, you know, local news sources and just listening to Black voices and BIPOC voices that I'm in with some of my old friends who are musicians. Most of them are white men. And I've come up against like, oh, here's that moment. And I'm super uncomfortable. But talking and not backing down, but saying, you know, no, here's what's happening in Seattle and the protests, and like doing that face to face with somebody who's saying, well, I marched in the 60s and I, you know, blah, blah, blah. I helped raise 2 Black kids. But like, no, you know, here, you please listen to what's going on. And a very interesting interaction with a friend of mine who was doing a show last night and asked me I was going to sing something. And the first thing he does is say, hey, Mel. And then he tells this joke that was racist. And he said it was a linguistic joke. And I was so like fight or flight in the moment. And I'm on stage in front of a group of pretty privileged, rich white people out on this resort in northern Colorado. And I put down the mic and I walked off stage. Excuse me. Because that's the only way I could see fit to handle that in the moment. And I don't know that was the right thing to do, but it had to be interrupted. So anyway, that's where I need to get my tears under control. So I'm gonna stop talking.
Thank you, Melanie. These are the moments that we have to practice for, you know. It's not natural. We weren't socialized to interrupt racism. We weren't. We were socialized to avoid it and to stay in solidarity, whatever that means, you know, whatever environment you're in, to be in solidarity and not with anti-racist yes. So keep practicing. That's all I can say. Keep practicing. It does get easier. I can assure you, it does get easier, but not without, you know, going through discomfort. Not without going through discomfort. Yeah, thanks.
And
Do you remember who was after you, Melanie? Because we were naming the names and I didn't write.
Oh, yeah, Maren.
Maren.
Okay.
Yeah. Hi,
Maren.
I'm Maren, or Maren. I'm Maren. She, her are the pronouns I use. I'll answer to they. So, good question. What do I do as an ally? Well, I'm a physician, and for over 20 years, I worked in the county's I live on the San Francisco Peninsula, and I worked in a community clinic. I'm bilingual in Spanish, and when I'm in that environment, 90% of my patients were Latino, and all of the staff, except for me and the pediatrician, were bilingual, bicultural. But what I did was, as we expanded the clinic and I was in charge of hiring, I would never hire a physician unless that person was bilingual. And by the time I left, half of our physicians were also Latino. That was just my policy. And then, yeah.
Keep going. Yeah, I thought you finished. Keep going.
No. And then more recently, over the last 8 to 10 years, I have been doing a lot of reading, a lot of educating myself, a lot of making a point with my Black friends, my biracial partner, to ask, what is your lived experience? You know, to come to understand that no matter how professional you are or anything else, what experience is, and then sharing that with other white people. I remember with horror about 5 years ago, my adult son, saying, "Racism is only in your generation, Mom. It's a thing of the past." So I made it a point to try to educate him. And I have to say that after this current set of videos that have gone viral, he finally understands. So I guess the other thing I've been doing is sharing my library, sharing, The Warmth of Other Suns, sharing all those books with other white folks I know, trying to help them understand. Because of age and health, I haven't been out on the streets the way I was before. I haven't been arrested the way I was before. And part of me feels chagrined about that. But I am doing my best to, and to up my Facebook presence, where all of my posts are around this, trying to share, trying to educate people. And I'm somewhat hopeful that there feels to me to be at least a shift in openness among white folks to take the blinders off. I don't know where it'll go. But like a lot of people, I don't feel like I do enough, but that's what I'm doing. Thank you.
I think what you did around hiring for the clinic is pretty profound. That's structural change, to say that we're going to value bilingualism and not just the things that are typically valued in hiring processes, is a very proactive, progressive thing to do. And it does make you proved it yourself. You did your own experiment. It had an impact. And that's what we want to do, is look for things that we can do that have an impact. That's exciting. Thanks.
And I just want to add.
The other thing I'll just add, I'm sorry, Kiana. I was just going to say, that's also when I became aware of the Black Hispanic inter-racism, because we had both a physician and a nurse who were from Panama and Eastern Nicaragua. So they were Black Hispanics.
Yeah. Afro-Latino.
And yes, and the equivalent of the N-word was sometimes used by my Mexican or Central American patients, and I would always intervene with that as well.
And I want to encourage all of us to do a little bit of that background. If you do some of the work around understanding where folks went during the slave trade, 95%. North America only got 5% of the slave trade. 95% went to where we consider Latinx countries right now. Being indigenous and being Black was, there was a lot of Black and indigenous folks in those spaces, which is, and then Spain came in and did a lot of colonization there, right? And so even the folks who went to, the folks during the slave trade who went to Brazil and they South America and all of these places. That's where a lot of dark-skinned Afro-Latino folks come from, and just really understanding the history. North America only got 5% of the slave trade. Like, that is a huge thing to understand around how anti-Blackness was framed for the rest of the world. And so do some of the, if you Google it, you can literally Google the image of slave trade, and there is this 2-minute video that goes through all of the dates and where folks went. It's just, it looks like Africa's bleeding. It's really, really sad. It looks like Africa's bleeding, but the amount of folks who went where, to really understand some of that old history of anti-Blackness in Latinx communities. Just to give some insight, folks should do a little bit of that research, and really you'll understand also how North America did something the US did something very, very different with racism than the rest of the world. And that's one of the reasons that we are having these conversations still. And just also to Marin's point, is it Marin? Marin, sorry, thank you. To Marin's point, about even your son saying, you know, racism was in your generation. It's really important that we understand, yep, Diana, that's the one. It's in the chat if anyone wants to see it. But that people understand that our youth are not going to, you know, we always say things like the youth are going to save us. The youth are being socialized exactly like we were. The youth are being socialized to uphold whiteness. The youth are being socialized to assume criminality for Black and brown folks. The youth are being socialized exactly like we were. Nothing different is happening. And so part of our conversations right now are helping them build language to disrupt what they're going to be experiencing as adults. So just a reminder that we have to keep on, because we can't hand what we've been handed down to them.
Thanks, Kiana. Marin, do you remember who was in queue after you, or have we run out of the original queue?
Oh, it's Michelle Burge.
It is Michelle now. Okay, come on in, Michelle.
Good morning, everyone. My name is Michelle. My maiden name is Castro. My married name is Burge. I am Filipino and Chamorro. My father's family is from Guam, so I am a Pinay Chamorita. And I go by she, her, and my perspective is a little bit different. I'm not Black, I'm not white, I am brown. And so I am in a unique position to be supportive, to be an ally, but also to defend. And in the Filipino culture, there is that anti-Blackness issue that we have to work on. And that when I say we, I am constantly trying to educate. There's different generations, come from different places. We have been colonized by pretty much everyone. So there's a colonization mentality that is happening. And when you come here to America, you're supposed to assimilate. And in doing so, you will lose an identity. And so regaining that identity and being proud of the brown skin you're in. And so I'm proud of my brown skin. I want to raise awareness to my brown people. And so I will constantly share and point out and confront racism within my own people. And I have to remind people and do a little education as far as the Buffalo Soldiers in the Philippines. And that they were sent there by the Americans for a specific reason. And when they looked around and said, these people are as oppressed as we are, what the hell are we doing? Sorry, Lady A. You know, they stood with the Filipinos and they supported the cause. And some of those were my elders that had fought in that war against America at that time. So I am not Black, but I see you. And I am here. And my existence is benefited by my ancestors. And so I have to honor them every time that I stand up and say something. My husband's family is from Mississippi. And so if you can imagine when I go visit, I'm such an anomaly to them. We've been married going on 37 years. So imagine how I was a young 20-year-old in Mississippi being asked, where are you from? Oh, you want to know where I'm from? I was born in Stockton, California. That's where I'm from. No, where are your people from? Oh, my ancestors. Ah, okay, I get it. Well, you know, you Orientals. No, that is not a term we use. I may be lumped into Asian, but I'm Filipino and I am Chamorro. And so I actually now get a box on the census form. I'm not other anymore. So I am supporting in the way that I can. I'm not out there protesting. I have a compromised immune system. So I'm doing what I can from my keyboard and being an activist in any way I can other than physically putting my body out there. Because I'm stronger here than I would be there. I'm gonna leave that to the young people. I'm closing in on 60, so I'm just kind of, you know, just trying to do what I can. And I'm here to support everyone. And it's important that we recognize allyship and where we are and what we can do for each other, speaking up, speaking out, and staying hopeful, because hope is what I cling to at this point in time. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Michelle.
Let's
And
see if Oliver.
I just want to also remind folks to not feel bad about where you are in your activism. The only way that the civil rights movement worked was because journalists were journaling, photographers were taking photos, people were marching in the streets, there was people in the capitals fighting, there was people in the boardrooms. Like, everybody's role is necessary, and in those places you can still disrupt, storytell, do all of the necessary things wherever you are at. But we need all of the work in all of the places.
And we're all learning. We're all on a journey. I did not know the Buffalo story, Buffalo Soldiers in the Philippines story. Michelle, thank you. I am going to find out more about that. So we're all learning. I think, though, that the showing up is the challenge, and putting ourselves on the line in some way, because oftentimes activism can look pretty passive. So it's about continuing to push our edge, whatever our edge is. We start from where we start from, and we push our edge as we move forward. Yeah, thanks, Kiana. Good reminder.
And I also want to just name, we have an hour left. And this is, I just want to say thank you for all the folks who have engaged. And there was a question in, and Darlene, maybe you can add. I'm also putting in the chat who's next. And so, Darlene, if you want to add, though, there was a question about what is the purpose? Why would we do land honoring in these small groups? And in the chat, I noted that it's necessary for us to tell the truth whenever we can. Do you want to add anything to why it's important that we?
Yeah. Well, it's because, I mean, I am truly a fan and a supporter of Brian Stevenson. And it's actually, he does some of the best talks on this too, that we cannot heal from what we have not or cannot acknowledge. This harm has already been done, and it is still being done. And so we have the opportunity to interrupt what's going on now, but also the profoundness of genocide is such a deep wound on the soul of our country. And it has been handled in such an invisibilizing way. It hasn't been handled, basically. And so bringing it up, we can't bring it up too often. It has been hidden from us in so many ways. I went to an elementary school in Seattle called Stevens Elementary School. It's up on Capitol Hill. Except when I went to school there, it was the Isaac I. Stevens Elementary School. And Isaac I. Stevens was the first territorial governor and the first governor of the state of Washington. And he was personally responsible for breaking the treaties and keeping the Duwamish people from being recognized by creating a diaspora and by causing so many of them to die and be removed from the land that is now the city I grew up in. And I lived under that shadow without knowing it and without being an agent for healing it. And now they've dropped the Isaac I. Stevens because they don't want people to remember who Stevens was. And I'm I feel like one of my jobs is to get the name of that school changed and to get the school district to recognize who Isaac I. Stevens was, and that he was a murderer, and that he destroyed the indigenous population of Seattle, Washington, and other parts of the state as well. So it's stuff like that. We can't fix our history if we can't tell our history, and we can't heal from our history if we can't tell our history. So that's why we do it.
And I think that this still answers the question, but there was a clarification from the person who asked that. There's chats moving, so
So the response that you're looking for, Kiana, is this, did you find it?
I did, but go ahead.
He says, I did not mean why is it important, but what are we going to accomplish from it, and how do we hope actually to have this impact what is occurring? Speaking about indigenous land.
Well, if we're thinking about it, we can show up for indigenous people. That indigenous movement in this country is alive and well. And that movement needs co-conspirators very, very much. And of course, we had a big example of that at the pipeline demonstration that went on for months, where many co-conspirators showed up and followed the leadership of the indigenous people there and modeled what it looks like to show up and put your body on the line for other causes. For me, because I'm also not demonstrating so much these days, it becomes part of my giving plan. I do give as much as I can to causes that I care about, and I make sure to explicitly make sure that some of my meager, means goes to indigenous groups and organizing and supporting them in that way. If I can't show up physically, we have to figure it out. We just have to remember to show up for indigenous people. They've been invisibilized. They're here. They're fighting for their liberation and for what is due them. So yeah, it's just to remember that allyship opportunities abound.
And I would just want to add also that, there is a clear practice that Indigenous folks have around how you are a guest on others' land. So if they, way back in the day would go to another land, they functioned in a way that is a guest. And it is extremely disrespectful that we as colonizers on this land, as part of the colonized framework on this land, not acknowledging them and not working as guests in this land is also harmful to Indigenous culture. It is harmful to the fact that we've disseminated this idea that there's one way of being, doing, and thinking. And that one way of being, doing, and thinking as American culture has actually harmed our land. And it's necessary that we understand that the people who have been trying to sustain this land and quality for the next generation are working in our favor as well, not simply for a small piece of the society. That is for all of us. And to be a guest on this land and not even acknowledge that we have harmed it, I can't imagine being in somebody else's home and ransacking it and then being like, now you know, thanks.
Oh, well.
Oh, well, right.
Oh, well.
And not ever saying it was, that there was. Indigenous folks had a huge network of education, learning, trade, politics long before white colonizers came to this place. And one of the lies that they told is that that didn't exist, that they were not, I'm trying not to use negative language that's been used in our history books, but that they were not.
That they were somehow less than human.
Somehow less than human. Thank you,
Yes.
Darlene.
Because
So
that's a
just-
convenient narrative. That's a convenient narrative for doing what was done.
And that somehow genocide and harm to Indigenous folks is human. Like somehow the white normativity, like that's the way things should go. And we need to retell the truth. Thank you for that question. Thank you, Darlene, for that depth. And it looks like Lady A is showing John Oliver as next.
Wonderful. Thank you all so much. Thank you for having me on as well. Thank you to our beautiful facilitators, and to each of you, God bless you. My name is John Oliver III. I'm a Black man in America from Seattle. My thoughts on how I personally am cultivating liberation is to be transparent. Be as transparent as possible of who I am, my heritage. John Oliver III. I'm a third generation Baptist preacher. I'm also a paralegal. I work in corporate America, but for so many years, I've spent time code shifting just to fit in. I think I said this on our last Truth is Loud, that one thing I love about working from home is that I just get to be John. I'm not Black John. I'm not Black John trying to fit into predominantly white America. I'm just John. When I get on a Zoom call, I'm just John. So the thing that I was challenged at the most of our last discussion was to be transparent. So what I've done is I've kind of pushed that forward. At my job, I'm part of the racial diversity, and it's important for me to tell the truth. I've been living the truth as a Black man in America, but now I need to tell the truth. I need to be transparent about my being comfortable, being uncomfortable from all of my lifetime. And not just for me, but the thing I also have to do is to let this generation know that, listen, the death of Mr. George Floyd was horrible. The young lady who filmed it, we thank God for her because it took courage to do that. But I also want to empower this next generation knowing that, listen, Emmett Till and those who even came before him, Emmett Till's mother was brave and courageous, right? She took a stand. She wanted the whole world to see what they did to her baby. So my job for this next generation is to let them know this just didn't start because, listen, our pain is not a trend. It's been going on. It's not a trend. It's been going on. We've been comfortable being uncomfortable. So my job is to voice, listen, what I've been living, to be transparent about it, right? Because it's the pain we carry every day. Just being Black, people of color, Indigenous people, it's the pain we carry. You know, so many times during this pandemic, we all want to hug each other, but we can't. So during this time of racial injustice that the whole world is seeing in real time, I mean, because that's what we have on our side. We have the phone. As soon as something happens, Karen, you act up, we're going to film you. Kyle, we're going to put you on camera, right? It's still the pain that's there, though, that we're carrying, but we can't embrace one another now. So my job that I feel is to let folks know the pain that we've always carried is nothing new. It's the pain that my parents, their parents, and so on and so forth have always carried. Our pain is not a trend. It's here with us. And so my challenge is to be as transparent as possible, to use my words, right, to let everyone know that our pain is not a trend. Thank you.
Oh, thank you, John. It's a lot of truth. A lot of truth. Are we up here to?
We have Mykesha Robinson is next.
Oh, thank
I'm
you.
updating
Thank
the
you,
list.
Lady A. I appreciate that.
Hello, good afternoon. I am just so pleased. I'm so delighted to be a part of this wonderful platform that Lady A and her production company is providing. And I was just listening to everybody's story and just scrolling through all of the photos and seeing the robust beauty and the diversity that we're all bringing to the table. My name's Mykesha A. Robinson. I am African American or Black. I'm not offended if you call me Black. And I identify with my Creole heritage. I'm very proud of my Southern roots. And I'm also a she, her. I was doing a lot of thinking. I mean, I have like 5 pages of notes because everyone has brought so much wonderful insight to the table. And I've just been so touched by some very personal and difficult conversations that have been had. And I just wanted to follow back with Diana when she said, she said, it's not enough. And I just want to encourage everybody who's on this call today, if you're on this call and you can listen to these difficult conversations, you're enough. You are enough. And I thought a lot about Bryan Stevenson. And in his speech, he says, there's power in proximity. And I saw it last night and I thought about it and I said, what does he mean by proximity? Because everybody's proximity is different. For some, they may be able to go and protest. For others, they may be able to provide online support, but what is close? And I said, what is a time in my life where I went through a lot of pain? And I can kind of relate that to childbirth. I don't know if anybody on this line has given birth to a baby, but a Black woman, birthing something that's purposeful and that's powerful and that will change the course of the world. It's a very, very painful experience. And so I have white allies. I have many white allies. And I say that not all can be in the room when there's pain being birthed into purpose. It's not for all. And I know all makes us feel comfortable when we say the word for all, but all is not allotted to everybody. Black people were just 3/5 human. We were not considered all. And so I thought about the Pledge of Allegiance and I said, we haven't reached all yet because justice, it comes after all. If we're at that point of saying for all, then we've conquered justice. The Pledge of Allegiance say with justice for all. And so I did some thinking and I said, well, how can I get my white allies to come in proximity to my pain? How can I get them to relate and to support me best? And I say, I'm not great at everything, but I do know I'm a good mom. And I thought about my daughters, Trinity and Faith, and Trinity is a cheerleader, Faith's a cheerleader. I said, those are some of the best times where no matter what your skin color is, your ethnicity, your age, we can all come together for a good sport. Maybe you're not equipped to be on the field because you've got a disability, but maybe you can be a cheerleader. Well, I'm not really good at cheering online, but you know what? I can sell a pack of Skittles. I can do a small act of kindness that's going to make a world of difference. And so I just encourage our white allies to find your space, find your purpose in that proximity that Mr. Stevenson was talking about. Sometimes your best intentions don't always come across as what's good for Black people. And so you say, oh, well, they're hurting my sister. I've got to run in there and I've got to interfere and engage. But sometimes all your Black sister needs is for you to cheer her on. I'm not looking just for allies. I'm personally looking for cheerleaders. Say good things about me. Encourage me. Inspire me to make a difference. And I don't want you to give up on who you are. You don't have to lose your own identity to be an ally of mine. I want you to keep your wonderful identity. I was born and raised in white communities, often to where I didn't have a single Black person to identify with. So for me, people I love, they're white. I had white godmoms. I thought I had a good tan. I didn't realize, who I was until I was an adult. I was much older. And when I grew up, I joined the United States military. We were stationed actually right there at Fort Lewis McChord Air Force Base. And so a lot of the perspective that I have as an African American it looks much like this forum. I see all these wonderful, beautiful faces, and I say, you know, as a white American, I would never give up on your heritage. I say, embrace yourself. But I say, you see the pain that Black women in particular are going through. You don't have to rush in to rescue me. Allow me to birth something purposeful and amazing out of my pain. Just be a cheerleader for me. And so I'm not going to go on. I'm so inspired by each and every one of you and the value that you've brought to the table, only if you can feel my heart. And what I see and what I feel, I want you to feel it. And sometimes you won't know what to do. It's a very hard conversation to have. When you don't know what you need to do, you know what you should do? You should close your eyes and just feel the beat of your heart. Feel the rhythm. You make the decision on how to be an ally based upon what you feel in your heart, because there is no right answer. So I'm going to end it here, but I want to thank all of you and respectfully encourage you all to, you know, keep an open heart, keep an open mind. And one day we will get to all. We're not there yet. Justice has not been for all, but we're moving in that direction. So thank you, and God bless all of you.
Thank you so much for that, Beauty.
Yes.
Sometimes just witnessing the brilliance and beauty of Black and brown folks can be revolutionary. Mm-hmm. We've been Black and brown for a long time, our whole lives. And sometimes we just need you to see us and cheer us on, talk good about us when we're not in the room, remind people that was our idea. Sometimes just to see us.
Come on. Come on.
Thank you.
Thank you so much. Lots of truth.
And I have next Michael. I'm not sure how to say the last name.
Mike Jop.
That is Jop, yes. Am I there or here? Cool, okay. I am a white, blonde-haired, blue-eyed guy. And I've spent my whole life being a part of, and it's really hard to follow Makisha. Trying to hold back tears right now. But anyways, I was raised in a multicultural neighborhood and also raised Catholic with Catholic guilt. And grew up with white privilege, which I didn't even realize really until I heard the first N-word when I was in first grade and didn't understand it. And anyways, in trying to be an ally, I struggled with the anger that I carry because of everyone's hearts that are broken because of this calamity that we grew up in America. So let me collect myself for a minute. Anyways, I feel guilty for many reasons, thanks to Catholic guilt. But I feel guilty because I become very angry at the stupidity that we live with in society and the people that promote racism are they're crazy. But how do you get through? I have a question, I guess, more than anything, is how do you get a conversation going with somebody that is so bigoted that there's really probably no hope that they're ever going to get it because they were raised to be, I mean, it's a learned, racism is learned. And I was very racist and I'm learning. I don't know anything, but I'm learning. And, you know, the murder and all that crap that's been going on for forever, since whenever. And it's so appalling that I can't comprehend how anybody could justify what happened to Floyd or, you know, what happened to all blacks throughout history. And I mean, I have police friends that are definitely on the side of trying to fix this stuff, but I also have police friends that are not. And that worries me a lot. So my big question is, how do you get the conversation going without your anger destroying the possibility of opening somebody's mind?
Deanna, you have thoughts?
Yeah, I was going to say that's a really good question. And I am a big proponent of how we show up as human beings, and that includes all of our emotions, is necessary. And I just want to add that I was I started with a lot of anger when I started this work. And I remember Darlene telling me all the time, not everyone's going to get on the bus right now, but the beauty is the bus comes back around. And so whether it was anger I was showing, or frustration, or pain, or hurt, it was necessary for where I was at. And it was necessary for the moment, but that I can learn additional strategies, and that the bus will come back around for people. People whose minds are closed, sometimes we plant the seed and other people water it that we may never know. But that our role is to be our full human self. And as a facilitator, though, you know, sometimes that's a different role. I will say always that's a different role. But as a person who is living in this world, trying to just connect with others, I recommend that you think about how anger has a place in this work, how you should be hurt and harmed and angry about justification of harm to people. That's me, but I really stick with Darlene's frame for me, that it's okay that they didn't get on the bus today, and the bus will come back around. Darlene, your thoughts?
And the other piece of that is that we don't need everybody, we just need enough. So I knew you were reaching for that. The thing to remember in changing the world is that it always starts with a small group of dedicated and determined and proactive people, that happens. And then it spreads from there, and it takes less than we think to make a difference. And so if we run up against somebody that is so infuriating to us that all we can do is sputter, and it ruins our day to even try to deal with them because they're so closed-minded or hateful or whatever the case might be. It's also okay to say, you know, I'm not the one to convince this one. Let me go on and find somebody who I feel like I can reach, who I feel like I can touch, who I can motivate. There's such a range of where people are. And so a lot of it, this is organizing theory. We just keep talking to people till we find the ones who will get on the bus, you know, who will come with us, who will build the movement. And then remember that there will be more chances for other people to come along. Maybe we plant a few seeds, and then we go on to the next door that we're going to knock on. And because sometimes people open the door and they say yes. And we're looking for those yeses. We're looking to activate the people who are ready to be activated, those who have not been called in yet, but who are ready to come in. We want to call them in first, get the momentum going, and then we could circle back for the hardened ones. I never give up on anybody, but I do think that sometimes some people aggravate me too much, and I just say, you know what, I'm going to sing Kiana in on that one because she doesn't, this might not push her buttons as much. We can be strategic. Or we can send another person. So, I think that if we think of it in the big scheme of things, touch the people you can move first, and then your skills will grow, and you'll get more skillful at dealing with people that are tougher. Because there are lots of people out there that are just wondering what to do. You can help them. You can help the ones that are just wondering what to do, that don't need to be convinced that something needs to be done. So many people are sitting there wishing that they knew what to do. Trust me, that's the majority of the people in this country. So look for them. Bring them on the bus.
Gotcha. All right.
I
do
also
want
want to, oh, sorry, go ahead.
No, go ahead.
No, I just want to say thank you for being human and showing that piece of your emotion, because that also allows other people to break down ideas that they hold so strongly about what it means to be male in this conversation, about what it means to be leading in this conversation, or any of those pieces that we've been socialized to believe this is our role in society. And so I just want to also thank you for just being human, and don't lose that.
Thank you. Thank you for allowing me to speak.
Yeah. And I also want to remind Black and brown folks that white folks who refuse to engage or are harmful, they're not your work. Your work is to cultivate joy and to cultivate love, and just remembering that you deserve so much peace and happiness. And so sometimes it's okay to leave somebody exactly where you found them.
Up next, we have Gail Weaver.
Yeah, I have Gail next.
Hi, my name is Gail Weaver Harrod. I'm white, and I identify with the pronouns she and her. I was really, the piece that we viewed by Bryant Stevenson, it really resonated with me, the part about proximity, becoming proximate. A little background about me. When I was 7 years old, we moved to an area that was very rural, very racist. There was a very strong Klan presence there. I saw cross burnings when I was 9 years old. So all of that had a really kind of profound effect on how I viewed things. Fortunately, even though there weren't a lot of Black people in my community, I made strong connections with a few of them at a very young age. And so I think that kind of formed my own, I don't know, I guess, views about things that, that were kind of in conflict with the community around me. So in a way, I think that may have been fortunate. And I lived in that community for most of my life. And I have, fortunately, through music, developed a lot of close friendships with people of color who've definitely helped me grow, in my own ideas about racism and learning. And so I guess one of the things that I have learned is that, white and Black people tend to self-segregate. They tend to work in places with people who are like them. They tend to live in places with people who look like them. They tend to socialize with people who look like them. And so in the past 3 years or so, the atmosphere of racism in this country has gotten so, just so bad. I found myself just really not feeling comfortable in my community anymore. And, I've always been very vocal about speaking out about racial injustice. I'm very vocal about challenging people around me who are using, racist dog whistles or have, racist ideas and conversations. I think like that for me is like the bare minimum of action that you can do, So, I kind of made the decision that I wanted to desegregate myself and become closer to the problem and become a part of the solution. So this past year, I sold my house in rural Carroll County, Maryland, and moved into Southwest Baltimore City, into a neighborhood that is almost entirely African American. And I have never been happier in my entire life. I have been so welcomed here. And I finally, like, I feel like I belong. And one of the things that, you know, I've become a part of a community, which is something that I never really had before. And it's such a wonderful feeling. And we are, as a group, you know, I'm working with others in the community now to improve our community. As you probably know, Baltimore has a lot of violent crime, a lot of poverty. So we're trying to get programs established for the local youth. We've already gotten them involved in gardening. I've planted my entire backyard in garden, which is helping feed my community. You know, we're involving kids in different youth programs. We're trying to get our parks restored. And, you know, one of the things that I keep hearing is that, you know, the people in my community, they have been trying to do these things for a long time, but they keep getting the doors just aren't open for them. And so one of the things that has come out of this, of me being here proximate to all of this, is that I can use my white privilege to open some of those doors and get them the resources and the audience that they need with the people that they need to have as allies in, you know, in improving their neighborhoods. So, you know, I'm not here to be a savior, but I'm here to do the work that they're telling me that needs to be done. And, you know, I think that's, you know, for me, that's the lesson of proximity, is you don't really know what a community needs or what people need until you are in it. And I love being here. And I don't know, that's all. I just wanted to share my experience with that. So thank you for letting me speak.
Thank you. And thanks for being specific about delineating the difference between savior work and co-conspirator. It's a really important thing for people to know as they move into proximity, particularly with Black and Indigenous folks, that there's a tendency sometimes in our attempt to help to recenter whiteness in that process. And it's so important not to do that. And it is important to be proximate. It's another one of those dichotomies. And it sounds like you're navigating it very consciously. So thank you.
And I just want to add, thank you for naming to be closer to the problem in order to find solutions. A lot of folks are very interested in centering Black and Brown folks, but actually don't know any Black and Brown folks or have ever had them in their home, spent time with them, have them as listening to them as, you know, understanding what to do. And so to get closer to the solutions, you have to be close to the problems. And so just naming how important it is to actually have people in your life who are experiencing the harm that racism manifests. So thank you.
Fortunately, you know, through music, I have had a lot of people of color in my life that I am very close to. So it's funny, my conversations about race with people of color actually are much easier than my conversations about race with other white people. So it's an interesting dynamic, but yeah, thank you.
And that's the other side of the coin too, is not to leave those white people to the people of color. And to also make sure that those hard conversations with other white folks are also happening is part of the picture. But yeah, it's wonderful. Thanks.
Yeah, thank you. I have up next Cindy.
Yes. I think I'm unmuted. Okay, I'm Cindy. I identify as white and my pronouns are she and hers. I've been aware intellectually of my white privilege for a pretty long time. But being more aware emotionally is what I feel like I need to do. I think I was kind of perversely blessed by, of course, you know, I'm a fish in the white water, right? But that little bit of toxic current from the white male water has given me some sensitivity, and especially because I was trying to raise 2 white male children. And so I just sort of gradually have become more aware of my need to be more emotionally aware of my privilege. And I've had a very privileged life, except for the little toxic current of white male water. And so I have been trying to educate myself. I feel like, so, and that part of that comes from my background. I'm an attorney, so I advise people, and I'm also a teacher. So you can see where I feel like compelled to arm myself with information before I go out to try to talk to other people, particularly other white people. And then I've got, you know, the personal side and the professional side. And on the personal side, I have a whole lot of family members kind of mostly on the East Coast, some of whom I have had to unfriend because I feel like my energy should be directed to people that might get on the bus, Darlene. So I've been trying to educate myself. I've been doing a lot of reading. This has been over the past probably 4 or 5 years. And I've been trying to work on those folks that I think I could convince to get on the bus. So my 90-year-old dad, I have him reading Stamped from the Beginning. And that to me is something amazing. My dad is actually, for being 90 and being raised in the Northeast, is, I don't want to call him progressive, but let's just say he's given up on the Republican Party. So he wasn't such a hard sell, but I'm arguing with him about things that I would not have dreamed I would argue with him about, especially at his age. And the other thing that I'm trying to work on is my students, my law students. Actually, I teach a couple of classes at UW Law School. One of them is legal issues and emerging healthcare technologies. And actually the year before last, I thought about adding kind of a component to the course about healthcare disparities. And so we've done that for the past couple of years. And if anybody wants to be on our panel, we kind of started off the quarter with a panel on healthcare disparities. And then I try to revisit that issue on each of the topics that we cover. So for example, if we cover mobile medical devices, then we talk about, okay, what are the healthcare disparities around mobile medical devices. So if anybody's interested in being a part of the panel that presents, we're doing it all remotely this fall because UW is going to be 99% online. Please, let me know somehow. If I can get your email, that would be great. And I'm really looking for people who, would like to provide these students, these law students, with information that will help them be aware of the long-standing healthcare disparities in this country. It kind of goes along with, I really did like Brian Stevenson's talk as well. And when he talked about the narrative, I thought that was very consistent with this kind of long, continuous, deeply rooted system that that we are living with that's just kind of popped its head up a little bit more in the last 3 years, but it's been there all along. So that, that's one small thing that I can do is try to raise their awareness when they go out and they start advising people on healthcare technology issues. So I have a lot of work to do. And I have to I am annoying my friends with posts. So I'm going to keep doing that because like many other people, I am in a high risk group. And so otherwise I'm a marcher, right? So I would be out there, but I'm donating money and I'm annoying my friends with posts and I'm trying to keep myself educated and I'm taking on my students who are young. So there's that. But yeah, I'm just really thankful for forums like this because, if you don't talk about it, nothing's going to happen. So it's uncomfortable, but there you go.
Thank you, Cindy. Good to see you.
Can I also say that I don't think we have actually enough time for everybody. So if there's anyone who wants to, give up their spot, definitely let us know when it comes to you. And I have next, the chat keeps moving. My apologies. Who's next, Lady A?
Lucas is next.
Lucas.
Yeah, thanks. And as a white male with all the privileges, I will happily give up my spot for someone else to speak because I'm trying to be in much more of a listening mode these days. But if it feels like it benefits the conversation, I'll just share briefly.
It benefits the conversation. I would personally like to hear from you.
Yes.
This is EA.
Okay. I don't feel like we've heard from as many men, so hopefully that's helpful. But and I resonate with so much of what the other white folks have said so far. So I'm going to try to be brief and not repetitive. Yeah, pronouns he, him, and identify as white. And like I mentioned, I feel like I have basically all the privileges. Male, white, heterosexual, cisgender, educated, college educated, able-bodied, middle class. And I've been really aware of that, I would say since my early 20s. And it has always felt very, very unfair to me. And I've been aware of white privilege, so to speak. But I think like a lot of people, not really sure what to do about it other than just be conscious. And when there were opportunities and conversations to sort of challenge people, mostly my white comrades, so to speak, or, other white people, to try to do that. And, but honestly, that hasn't come up a lot in my life. I haven't either had to do that a lot or pushed myself to do that a lot over the years. And that's one of the things that I would say in the last several months, since this conversation has really resurfaced in our country, I am actively trying to do. So joining this call this Zoom is part of what I'm trying to do. I'm trying to listen, I'm trying to educate myself, continue to hear. Like I said, I feel like I've been pretty aware of white privilege and I feel like I kind of understand the systemic racism and all that. But as I've been in more mode of listening and trying to open my mind and my ears further, I'm realizing there's still a lot about this that I don't understand and what it's like to not be white in this country and the history. And so joining this Zoom, and there's a 5-week course by White Awake that starts in a couple of weeks that I decided to register for. It's for white men called Declining Supremacy or something like that. Defecting from Supremacy, something like that. And I'm kind of a believer, I've been told, and I see the logic that as white folks, we have a lot of our own work to do with each other and trying not to make Black, Indigenous, people of color have to do that work with us or for us. So I'm trying to be part of that self re-education. And and just really being a lot more willing to challenge I run in very white circles, and that's something I've become aware of. I was raised in California in urban public schools, very multiracial. When I was a kid, the neighborhood my parents moved into a working class neighborhood, and my kids I played with were black and brown, I remember. And through middle school, and then I got to high school, we moved to another city, and somehow in high school it switched for me, and pretty much I ran with a white crowd and all my friends became white, and I feel like that's how it's been the rest of my life. Even though I live in I've lived in urban areas in California, I feel like pretty diverse. And so I'm very aware right now of how all my friends and family are educated, white, middle to upper class, generally very progressive politically, and aligned with me in trying to counteract systemic racism. But I'm learning how even within this group of white, progressive, educated people that think they're not part of the racism problem, and how we very much are part of the racism problem in our country. So just kind of continue to see how I can try to find ways to be an ally and use my privilege to help change the way things have been. So I think I'll leave it at that, to be brief.
Thanks, Lucas.
Thanks
Sounds like you're contemplating how to get into some good trouble.
Yes. Right.
Excellent.
And just as a side note, Andrew Lee did have your hand up. There's been some desire in the chat to hear from some of the male identified folks. Is that hand still, you put it down, is that hand still of interest?
Here's Andrew. Hi, Andrew. Why don't we allow Andrew to go next? I'm sorry, Sean. But Sean was on last time, so we're going to allow Andrew to go next.
And as a side note, we have about like 1.5 minutes. We have like 90 seconds if we get all of these folks in.
Oh, that's impossible.
Go ahead. That's impossible. Let's go. Let's just keep going. It's 12:51. Go ahead.
Okay.
I'll try to be pretty brief. My name is Andrew Lee. My race is Asian. My ethnicity is Korean American, and my gender pronouns are he, him, his. My background is just slightly different. I grew up in California until I was 12 years old, and then I actually moved back to Korea, and so I spent my high school years in Korea. When I was in California up until I was 12, I was just very aware of, I would say, some of my limitations in a sense that were sort of imposed on me by the culture around me. Felt like I wasn't athletic, wasn't popular, wasn't a leader. In moving to Korea, because the population was 99% ethnically Korean, it just changed the dynamic and dance for me so much, because everyone in the school was the same ethnicity. I started to play sports. I started to participate in government. I became a leader. And it wasn't until much later that I realized how much that impacted me personally. Just the aspect of not being seen based on my race or my ethnicity, but being seen as a person. And the impact for me personally was just, it enabled me, when I look back on it, to achieve my potential, actually, because people saw me as a person. And I say that because when I listened to Brian Stevenson's talk about about proximity, I mean, the impact of being in relationship is you start seeing people not by their race, but by who they are, their personhood and their characteristics, their strengths, their gifts. And I just love that. And I feel like I'm someone who benefited from being seen as a person. It changed in many ways the course of my life. And so when I hear kind of what can white allies do, I just come back to a very basic thing, which is build those relationships with brown, black, people of color, because then you can see them as people, and it can change the course of their life. Absolutely. So that was it.
I'm so glad you shared that. Thank you so much. That's really important.
So deep. Yes.
Next, we have Sean Lawrence.
Hi, I'm Sean, and I'm white, they, them, theirs. I'll just be really brief, just to make my point. I'd rather kind of step back and listen to a person of color maybe express more. But I find myself just thirsty for hearing from BIPOC voices. And so I realize that I've been filtered through my whole life of listening to white voices through the news, through so many different things. And I'm just trying to change that filter and change the narrative for how I'm absorbing things and then amplifying it back out again. There's a really good journalist here in Seattle. They're Converge Media, and they're owned by Black Voices, and they are amazing with how they're showing what's happening in Seattle. And I just find that it's important for us to listen more and center the Black voices more and the BIPOC voices more in this movement right now, and really listen and then share with our white friends and just amplify that. So, anyway, that's all I wanted to say.
Thank you, Sean.
And thank you for sharing the need to diversify your media and naming Converge Media, definitely giving a BIPOC voice in Seattle. I do want to just check in real quick, Lady A. We've got just a few more folks. It is 5 till, and I know you wanted to have the last word, and so I'm just checking in. Can we move to these folks, or?
Let's go to those folks, those last few folks. If nobody minds, we'll probably go a little bit over, but I think it's important that we reach these. We have 1, 2, 3, we have 4 more people, and we'd like to get that. And then we also want to end on a positive note. So if you don't mind, just stick around for a few more minutes. We're gonna get those 4 folks out there. Kiana and Darlene, I'm gonna leave it in your hands. I'll continue to talk in the chat. Go ahead. Next is Jennifer Ott.
Hi there. Oh, there we go. Thanks so much for giving me just a quick moment. I wanted to thank Andrew, and Andrew, it's nice to see you. That proximity from Bryan Stevenson's talk, I have been actively cultivating that for the last few years, because one of the things, and I wanted to thank John also for what you said about being transparent, is it's such a gift to somebody who hasn't experienced being a person of color to hear your experiences, because then it comes into focus and it becomes a more tangible thing that we're working to change. And I am always mindful that that can be painful and difficult and vulnerable. So I don't think it's always the work of people to share their stories, but when people do feel comfortable, I am always appreciative of it, because I learned so much. And it's so personal and immediate. So what I've been doing is taking that knowledge, and I don't love to make trouble. I was well socialized to not make trouble. And so I have been using this skill when I'm in places that are predominantly white or all white. I pretend that a friend is next to me, and would I tolerate that conversation in their presence? Or would I speak up if that person was there? So I just have this little mental person on my shoulder of, it gives me the courage to say, no, I have to disagree with that. Or, and I'm hoping to get to the day where I don't need that conscience on my shoulder to speak up. But for now, it is the thing that helps me kind of pull myself and vocalize my discomfort with what somebody has said or what's being left out of the conversation. And then the other thing from Bryan Stevenson's talk that really struck me is, I'm a historian. And so the change in the narrative, and that is something that I've taken baby steps on for years, but have really been trying to take big steps forward to. And again, to not worry so much about whether people agree with me. Being a white woman, and I'm sorry, I did not do my pronouns. I'm white, and she and her. I'm sorry, I forgot that. And it's hard to be a historian sometimes. And the mantra in my head is that I look like a historian too, because I had so many older white male professors tell me that I did not look like a historian. And so trying to get past that, to live with that discomfort. And I do not mean to disparage or empower the ethnic studies, but I feel like my role is to learn from the work done in ethnic studies and then integrate the narratives so that when you tell the history of Seattle, you don't say there's a mainstream history, and then I'm going to tell you what the people of color experience. It needs to be that we all have always been interacting. Seattle was never a white city. And so how do you tell that history in a way that brings all the threads together? And then also, as much as I'm able to, identifying and networking with people of color so that I can, whenever a project comes up, that I can send funding to writers who can write from their own communities, that I have ready people that I quickly, it's not like I can say, well, I don't know anybody that writes in that area. I need to be doing the work ahead of time so that I know who's doing the work in areas and I can bring their voices forward. It's always that time and money thing, so I'm not doing as well as at that as I would like to be, but just trying to remember that. So it was really great in Stevenson's talk, in that there's these really concrete ways that we can keep doing this. It's not feel good, it's concrete steps that we need to take. So thank you.
Up next, Chardell Blaine.
Hello, I'm Chardell, white, she, her, hers. I want to thank everybody for sharing so freely. It's remarkable. And I'll try to be brief because I'm basically really like super introverted and speaking to a group is not my comfort zone. But Bryan Stevenson's presentation really resonated with me, especially the power of proximity. I know that's come up a couple of times here. But it's having been raised in that's the diversity in my elementary school was one Chinese American child in the entire school. I just sort of, that was the environment where I was raised. In moving around a bit, began to, I
Chardell?
yes.
Sorry, you froze for a moment.
Sorry. Oh, I did? Oh, I'm sorry. So getting maintaining a comfort level was something that I wanted to do. And it wasn't really until it was in my 30s and we had an opportunity. We had a young child. We had an opportunity to move to New Orleans. And that sounded like fun. Never been there, and sure, why not? And when we arrived and we were looking for places to live, New Orleans it's so different from any place else in the country. It's like, I mean, you almost should have to have a passport to go there. But the real estate agent who was showing us houses had, chosen things that she thought we might be interested in, and was touting because we had a child, and the schools were, some were good and some were not. She was she was steering us to particular neighborhoods. And they were not reflective of the city. And the schools were not reflective of the city. And we knew that we wanted to raise children who had more inclusive experiences than we had had growing up. So we picked a different neighborhood because there was a school that was very diverse, and the proximity of having that experience, having friends, neighbors, fellow churchgoers, teachers, students who were it was a rainbow, was really, it helped to form the way my kids look at the world. And so for me, that proximity was a gift to me, certainly. It was a gift to my children. My son, at the age of 7, was playing hot summer day, and he and a friend was his best buddy from kindergarten, and they were out in the front yard playing with super soakers, just squirt guns. And the friend was black. His father came to pick him up after work, and was just his expression, his demeanor changed with the sight of these two kids, the black kid and the white kid, playing with super soakers in the front yard. And he pulled his kid aside and said, "You cannot do this." And so it was my first experience with the talk, and that the expectations for behavior were different. They were both like 7-year-old boys, and they were having a great time. But the perception of, that this man knew that his son might be at risk. And as he got older, that super soaker might be mistaken for something else. And so my son, at the age of 7, had this lesson as well. And it's just the importance of, there were lessons that proximity taught that I would not have been able to teach myself, because I didn't have it in me. I didn't know. And so the school where they were, every morning, they had a morning assembly, and all the kids lined up, and the principal would, after they got through all the announcements, they sang every day. And it would be, maybe something that was popular at the time. These kids did the Macarena a lot. It was the 80s. And I asked him, I said, "This is really unusual. I've never seen this before with this, I've seen the morning assemblies, and, here's what's going to happen for the day. But I've never seen an entire school come together in song every single day. And it's not a song that's like particularly a lesson." I said, "So why do you do that? Why do you do the song?" And he said, "Because when you sing together, you come together." And that was just part of what it set the tone for the day, that everybody was together. And it was powerful, and it was the proximity that did it. So thank you, everyone,
Thank you
for sharing.
Thank you so much, so much. And I just want to add that a number of people, especially in the chat, have been talking about that conversation of how do you get in proximity? Do you purchase property in Black and brown neighborhoods and continue the gentrification? What do you do? And so I'm just going to re-put in the chat a book that Katie had named, talking about understanding the value of property in America and what that means for Black lives. And the fact that we can do the work of being in proximity without having to own Black and brown neighborhoods. When Black and brown folks are seeking to get some information, knowledge, practice, experience that is outside of their neighborhoods, they bus it in, they drive there, they do all of these things. And so we actually, if you please do learn about how Black and brown folks were left out of the wealth building of owning homes for multiple generations, all the way up into the 80s, when they actually said, stop doing this racist practice, and understanding that we can still leave communities intact. When we purchase these homes in Black and brown communities, are usually at a lower price, a lower cost, and those are the homes that Black and brown folks can afford. And so just remembering what that means, I'm putting that back in the chat so that we can, because that exact conversation that Chardell was asking about is the conversation people were having in the chat. So just noting that. And also, Lady A, you keep putting Christine back in. Is it because you want to hear? Christine has ceded their time, but
sorry, I keep trying to take people out, but I keep.
Okay, I didn't know if you were like, nope, Christine, we're hearing from you. So I just wanted to be.
Christine, if she's giving up her time, then yes, because Roseanne is new to the chat, and so we'd like to give her an opportunity to speak.
And Roseanne, you would be next.
All right, well, thank you, everyone. And my name is Roseanne Lopez. I am Asian. I'm Filipino. My pronouns are she, her, and hers. Michelle, big up to you, my Filipino sister, as I've been seeing you do that. I just wanted to share. So as I think about what's my ability to be a change agent in the different scenarios that I'm in, I started off my career as an engineer in the petroleum industry, which was predominantly white and predominantly male. And so I was so fortunate to have two great allies. One was a Black male and one was a white male mentor. And what I learned from them was like, they were the ones, to a lot of people's points about when you're not in the room, how can they speak up for you? And then they opened that door for me to be able to listen and to learn. And because of that, I go into situations now and I ask myself, who are the decision makers in this room? Who has a seat at the table? Are the people that are here going to own those decisions, especially when I've been working in engineering, where a lot of our frontline operations staff are particularly, BIPOC, members. And so like, are they there to represent what they need? Like, saying, why are you designing it this way when it makes it more difficult for us, or it's not safe, or we have to come out here again and again in the middle of the night? And so those are the types of things that I think about. And when I think about perfectionism and dominant culture, to remind some of my colleagues to say, it doesn't matter, some people say, oh, they crossed the finish line. Oh, that was type A personality, we got it done. And I would say, well, I don't care if we cross the finish line, if we cross a path of destruction along the way. And so I ask people whenever I'm starting a new job to say, hey, what do you do? How long have you been here? Do you like what you're doing? What do you need to kind of reach that next level? What are some things that you'd like to do? And some people kind of look a little shocked because they're like, you're asking me? Or they're like, oh, this is different. Like you're doing these certain things like no one's ever asked me before. And so I say that to remind all of us that have that voice, a seat at the table, that, someone did it for us and how we do that for others too. And lastly, I'll end it with, I always talk about my mother-in-law. who's Vietnamese. Her name is Na. She's 4'11". She's a powerhouse, and she is just gritty and lovable and strong. And I remember coming home one day from my operations job in petroleum, and I said, it's been a really tough day. And she looked at me and she said, well, it's been a really tough day for all of us, but if we can do, we must do. And I want us to kind of have that. It's like, when you're weary and like the day is just long and you're kind of tired, to remember that. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you so much. Yeah. That was a great ending.
Yes, it was. Thank you so much. I want to, everybody who is in the listening portion, you can put your video back on if you will, or not, you don't have to, if you want to remain anonymous. But everyone else, I want to first of all thank Darlene and Kiana for facilitating. Y'all are amazing, amazing, amazing. Really did appreciate the conversation. I just want to let you know, the reason for The Truth is Loud is for those that can, through discussion, whether through music, I myself believe in conversation. So I believe that talking to people is important. I believe also that white people are the way to end racism, that it is you who needs to talk to your children about race, that it is you who need to talk to your coworkers when you're at work, that it is you who need to talk to your families and your communities, because we're talked out. Black people, indigenous people of this land, and people of color, we're exhausted. We get triggered and it's real. But I find that in conversations like we're having today, just the emotions that I've seen on people's faces, the emotion when you speak, it starts there. Every one of us has a job to do. This just happens to be mine, bringing people together. Can I facilitate? No, but I can bring, I'm good at bringing people together, whether I'm singing, because if you've ever been to one of my shows, I educate when you come to a show. You don't just get songs, you get the meaning behind the songs and where they came from. This conversation was important to me because the truth is loud. And sometimes we want to pretend like we can't hear and pretend like we can't see. And when I start seeing Black, indigenous people of color and being murdered in the streets and we're watching it on television like it's an everyday occurrence, even though it always has been, just we're filming it now, it bothers me. So I want us to remember that the truth is loud. It's in our face and it's time to stop ignoring it. I want to let you know that you can get a Truth is Loud t-shirt. If you would like one, just go to our truthisloud.info. The money is to help pay videographers and facilitators where we need and for instruction. Thank you, Sean has hers from the last time. We don't ask for any money. If you want to donate, you can. It does not go to me, so don't think it goes to me. It does not. It goes to help educate, facilitate, and hopefully share. I want to let you know that we have some more Truth is Loud conversations coming up. The next one will be Black men, indigenous men, people of color, men only, and white men. Having a conversation because we need men to start speaking up and being in the forefront. We also have a conversation coming up around music, musicians, having a conversation about race. So it's all a conversation. It's just talking. I appreciate each and every one of you for being here today. I want you to use your voice, speak up bravely. We are tired, but this is part of my job. I believe in bringing folks together because each one can teach one. And every time I get 60 people on a panel, every time I get 90 people, those 90 people go share with 90 more people. Everyone has a conversation with everyone else, and that's where we start. And that's where I believe. So thank you so much for joining Lady A's The Truth is Loud. Thank you, Roz, in the background. I know you're back there somewhere. You can all unmute yourselves. I am going to stay on for a few more moments. If you want to be in the post conversation, you can. Otherwise, I'm going to leave the last words with Darlene and Kiana. Leave us on a positive note. Woohoo! I'm going to turn some music on too.
Well, I just, as many of you probably did, I feel like I spent the week with Congressman John Lewis, and many tears, but also much joy and celebration for a life incredibly well lived. And I've just been thinking a lot about how much opportunity we have to learn from his legacy. He even left parting words for us in writing. He's of course not the only one, but he had this way of balancing love with fight. And those things sometimes seem to be in tension with each other, but his life was a study in how to not have our love be anemic. I think those were Dr. King's words. You know, love without action is anemic. We don't want anemic love. We want powerful love. And so I hold up the name of John Robert Lewis. He's so in my heart and inspiring my actions right now. And I hope that we have given you some things, and you have given each other some things to take forward into your lives tomorrow, the next day, and the next day, because there's always opportunities to make good travel.
I think there's nothing more to be said. That was such a beautiful ending. And the most we should definitely take is that, you know, he helped us reframe our narrative. And that's what we are doing today.
Everybody feel good?
Yeah.
Yeah. I need some hand waves to know everybody is okay and everybody's good. Look at all those people that were, all you people were in the background. Thank you so much. Have an amazing, amazing day. God bless you. Remember, go out, speak bravely. You can do it. Bye-bye.
Thank you. The truth is loud. Do you hear me? The truth is loud. The truth is loud. Do you hear me? The truth is loud. The truth is loud. The truth is loud. The truth is loud.
Can you hear me?